started here in about 5 minutes. We just wanted to say hello and welcome. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody who's jumping in. Okay, y'all, the chat is open, so we want to say hello to Jennifer. Thank you for joining us. We've got Jessica. Y'all, the chat's open. Enter your questions or even just tell us, who you are, where you work, and kind of what role you're in. We really want to make sure this is, an engaging webinar and, working session. And people always ask, what do you mean by working session? And really, we want people to come with their questions, and we are going to bring the solutions, but we want people to really engage and kind of talk through some things with us. So if you want to submit your questions or say hi, please do in the chat. And like I said, we'll get started in about 5 minutes. We're going to give people time to come in and submit questions or kind of introduce themselves. I'm going to say hi to Joe. Thanks for joining us today. We've got Nicole as well. Hello. Okay. I'm using the background, and I just feel like every time I move, it does a weird thing, but I'm just trying to be professional, everybody. On that note, I think we're all at home these days, so please excuse any tiny humans or barking dogs. That will happen. Okay, Emily, as we give people a few minutes to kind of jump in, I want you to talk about the medals on the wall. What do we got in your background?
Oh gosh, it's actually part of my strategy to get me to open up a little bit and not be shy. These are all of my medals from rowing. I was a championship rower, national championship rower in high school and college. So those are from a very long time ago, but make for good wall art. Good.
That's incredible.
Zooms.
Great Zooms. Yep. This is my faux office background. It's a pretty cool office space.
I feel like I should go to Goodwill and pick up some medals now. Just like display them.
I know, right? Maybe some of those Little League trophies that they get. It just says you participated.
I did get this.
Oh, there we go.
So I do have something.
I feel like everybody deserves one of those right now, because every now and then I just want to crawl up and not adult.
Same.
Okay, we've got a few more people jumping in. I want to say hi to Brianna, who is a part of our team. I'll be introducing her near the end of our working session today. Thank you, Erin, for throwing in the chat and saying hello. Hello, Nicole. Thanks for jumping in. I'm excited about what we're going to cover today. We've got, 20 questions that we are definitely not going to get to all of them. But we've got some really great conversations to be had. We're going to kick off things talking about HubSpot. Emily's got some best practices and such for us, and then we will go to some growth marketing stuff. Everything Emily says is very quotable, so get ready, because now I've put her on the spot. That's what we do here, Emily.
I can handle the pressure.
No pressure, just fun, just fun. Let's see. So Miranda and I are in Austin. Emily, you are Fort Lauderdale?
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got Erin, who is our behind the scenes person helping me out today, and she is in Atlanta, Georgia. So
hot Atlanta.
We got the South covered.
Probably all kinds of climates going on right now.
It was 71 degrees this morning and my teeth were chattering when I walked my dog. And I don't mean to brag. It's just that I am very sensitive to cold.
I always tell people in Austin, the summers hit 100 plus. And if I have to be comfortable with 100 plus, I'm going to be freezing when it's 75.
That's right. I mean, I think there's something that happens with your blood. That's my next webinar.
That's the next one. So everybody join us next time as we talk about climates.
I will cover the why is it when it's 100 degrees, do you have to have it 70 degrees inside businesses?
Yes. Okay, there we go.
Difference is shocking.
This is a great intro to our panelists because you can tell Miranda's the technical one. Okay, we are going to go ahead and kick things off. So I am going to screen share for just a hot second. One of the reasons why we love these working sessions, let's see, in a momentito. Okay. Is because we like the engagement. We like the networking part of it. We really want to kind of get people talking more than just looking at slides. So I've got a couple slides that I'm going to share, and then, we'll jump into just chatting amongst the group and answering your questions. So today we've got Emily, who's with Aptitude 8 and Vertify, and our working session is about HubSpot. Man, we have seen HubSpot really take on things in the market. They're growing, their capabilities are growing. They are becoming kind of an all-in-one thing. So we see more and more marketers turning to HubSpot, whether it's for pricing reasons or for ease of use. There's a lot of different things going on. So our client base has really grown on the HubSpot side. And that's, we wanted to kind of jump in, answer some questions just about HubSpot. We will also answer questions about how Vertify and HubSpot work together, what Emily's doing on the HubSpot side. But we want to give our community a place to kind of talk through and talk best practices with HubSpot. So an intro to our speakers today, Emily Wingrove, who's the head of growth marketing at Aptitude 8. Emily, I'm going to have you, give just a tiny intro about Aptitude 8 here and tell us what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, for sure. So we sort of started out as a technology consulting firm, and HubSpot was one of our biggest tools that we leveraged. We are platform agnostic, but we started with the implementation and the technical consulting on the back end there. And then we've really grown our business around HubSpot and all of its services. So I run all of the agency services, doing all CMS implementations and design and development, SEO, SEM, PPC, all of the fun marketing acronyms, and how they work with HubSpot. So yeah, we're a diamond partner with HubSpot. So we are in their good graces, and we're, just obnoxious fans. So more now.
Love it. And that's why you're here with us today chatting. And then we've got Miranda, who's on the Vertify team. She's the director of product ops. I always like to tell people, our customer base is, we've got high-level marketers, and then we have in-the-weeds technical people. So Miranda is going to be kind of the more in-the-weeds technical. And so Miranda, we kind of give an intro to what your day-to-day is at Vertify.
Sure, yeah. I spend a lot of time thinking about data integrations and data quality and how do we make our integrations smoother. And I spend a lot of time reading API documentation. So that's most of my days.
So I'm not saying I want you guys to stump the panelists, but if you do, it'll be hard to stump Miranda, but we will see. Okay. So I always like to kind of kick things off and say, you're going to leave with a greater understanding of what. So for today, we're talking about leveraging HubSpot for your marketing needs. Sometimes some of the questions we got were very simplistic, best practices, how do I get started? And some of them are more in the weeds about customer journey. So I'm excited to get into those. Growth marketing and gaining traction in a pandemic. For all the marketers on the call, we've seen so many changes, whether it's events, how we're talking to people, how we're, getting in front of people, the ambush of emails, all the things. So, and this term kind of growth marketing. Emily has a really incredible perspective on this. So I'm excited to dive into that a little bit later. And then data hygiene, contact bans. At Vertify, we discuss a lot about doing the best with what you have. We don't need to throw in more tools and platforms and all these things. Like, let's get the most out of what we're already paying for. And so part of that, especially as you grow as a company, is seeing that contact database grow. So what do we need to do to make sure it's clean, it's working the best for us, and not getting us into paying more and more and more if we don't need to. Okay, so for our introductions, beyond just who we are, well, I guess I should say, thanks for joining us. And I am the Senior Director of Marketing here at Vertify. I am all things on the incredible product that we have. I'm also our target market. So I talk to the product and dev team a lot about some of the features we use. And then on the flip side, I'm always helping with sales enablement and such, and customer success, which is kind of where this idea of a working session came up, because customer success said, our customers really want to get deeper into the platforms they have. They want to understand some of the things that we understand. I know Miranda gets some pretty technical calls in regards to Marketo sometimes. And so, if we can be that consultative resource to keep you from having to pay to talk to one of your platform customer success reps, we want to be there for you. So in our introduction, we're going to start with Emily, and what I want everyone to do is kind of discuss an interesting use case that they have with their clients, and that'll kind of introduce you to more of what we're doing in our day-to-day. So Emily, if you could start us off.
Sure. So I've got a pretty cool use case, and it's pretty unique, and it's leveraging one of HubSpot's newest features, which is custom objects, which really brings HubSpot sort of neck and neck with Salesforce and its customization capability. So it's cool. So the company is in the real estate industry, and they've got a page in HubSpot. They have their site built on HubSpot CMS. Another really great feature of HubSpot is you can build your whole website on it. But what they're trying to do is pull in information from the MLS, the multiple listing system, to, obviously the things are changing and being added all the time. That's a database in and of itself. But what we're doing, or the client's doing, is using custom objects. So a property is what the object is that we added into their HubSpot instance, and we're using HubDB and API calls to pull in the MLS feed and update the pages in real time with the actual information about the listings. So that has been one of the coolest things, I think, honestly, in my career, just to be a part of, because it's so, I just didn't think ever, I guess maybe back in like 2011, like that marketing automation platforms, I guess if you even want to call a HubSpot a marketing automation platform anymore, they're so like big now and have so many different features and cool tools. But I would have never thought that you could have done something so complex and so technical and also still call it marketing and do it in the marketing automation platform. So that's been fun, a little challenging. Obviously, we're using custom objects, which are brand new, but it has been really cool to see that you can use custom objects on pages in workflows, through emails, through all different kinds of triggers. So we're just super pumped to see HubSpot take that next step and sort of get into the same arena as Salesforce with the custom objects and customization.
I mean, do you remember when HubSpot was content? HubSpot was your blog, right?
Like, or it was just inbound.
Throwback.
Right. So it's coming a long way, and we're getting to do some really cool stuff with it. Do you have any other cool use cases for some of you guys as clients?
I love it. Yeah, Miranda, I want you to kind of talk about your side of things. Once again, the more technical, but some cool use cases that you have for us.
Yeah, so what we're seeing some folks start to do is they'll use HubSpot and they'll use it for their marketing emails, right? They want something to look really highly professional. It looks like, great links, and you can go in there and click on it, and it looks, very much like a marketing email. But they're seeing at some point that handoff to sales, where maybe someone filled out something and they want a demo, or at some point it crosses over into this, okay, now I want to switch into a very highly personal email looking, output for folks. And at that point, people want to bring in something like a sales loft or an outreach. And so what we're seeing is people will use HubSpot as like a trigger to then drop somebody into a cadence or a sequence in the sales automation platform. So it says, maybe they've gone to a different life cycle and now they want to switch over, and that basically turns off the record in HubSpot and then turns it on in their sales loft or their outreach. And so then it just is a seamless handoff to sales, and then they start working it. And those updates can also be flowed back in to HubSpot. So the marketer can see what's happening, and maybe at some point it becomes not qualified and it needs to go back into marketing, right? So it's just this back and forth between those two systems. And then it really allows you to use both systems in a way that they work best in. Sales loft and outreach are really made for sending those individual emails, making tasks, creating, a workflow for a salesperson. But then, the marketing automation is, it's more on a mass scale. So we've seen a lot of people kind of use those back and forth tools. And we've seen some kind of really cool things with our customers.
I mean, I think that's huge on our side, because I know I want to work in sales workflow. I don't want to try and make them jump out and do anything else, or say, hey, I've got this cool thing that you can do here, because they're not going to jump out. Like, I want to live where they are to be most effective with them. So that's been really exciting for us around here.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to jump into our questions. Like I said, we have a lot. So I am going to kick things off with Emily, because we talked about kind of best practices just right off the bat. Let's talk best practices with HubSpot and kind of set the stage for some of the things that you go over with your clients, and some of the things that you've seen as well.
For sure. So I think you guys know me a little bit, my background. I come from the data world, and as it relates to marketing, so MarTech in the data space. So audience and data are quite possibly the most valuable assets that a marketer could ever have at their disposal, quite possibly more valuable than the product or service that they're offering or trying to sell, because that's who you're talking to. If you don't know who they talk to and you don't know anything about them, then you can't really sell your stuff. So I think the obstacle that our customers come across probably most often is just the data hygiene, right? Like it's a never ending process. It's always ongoing. And I mean, I think if you're not continuing to try to clean, you're creating more and more mess. What do they say? Data, garbage in, garbage out. But that's probably one of the biggest things that we see, just pain points with our customers. And HubSpot's got this cool feature that they came out with, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. But basically they append their own, I don't know, through their partners perhaps, but they append some data on top of company records when a new email address comes in. So say it's emily@apple.com. They're going to say, oh, apple.com, that's a domain. They're associated with a company, and we have information about this company, and they pull it in. And obviously you can turn that feature off if you have a data partner that you prefer to have over them. But that is definitely one of the cool native tools that HubSpot has that helps you keep your data up to date, because it's doing it all the time, not just as they come in. So that's one thing. I think another thing that HubSpot does that helps to keep your data clean and also help to keep your just like marketing operations a little aligned to best practices is they have this feature, like when you're going to go send a marketing email, it's a checkbox and it says don't send to unengaged contacts. They define that as someone who has either never opened a marketing email and hasn't opened any of the last 11, or they haven't opened any of the last 16 marketing emails. So these people are like basically RIP. You don't want to send emails to them because they're going to mess up your bounce rates and your response rates, click-through rates, all that good stuff. So that you can just turn that off, and that there's just like a simple definition around it that's, it's defined well, that helps at least keeps some of your stats in order and keeps some of those dead folks out of your way. There's Dupe Management inside of HubSpot. There's a lot of cool features where you can overwrite, which is fun and cool until it's not. So that's probably my biggest warning, is be very careful with overwriting certain fields, especially ones that maybe need to be timestamped or that are like your source. Be very careful about overwriting your source, even though it's cool that you can do that. Just be careful. So those are some of the sort of best practices around keeping your data clean inside of the HubSpot tool. Obviously, there are a lot of cool separate tools outside of it that can help as well. But that is probably the biggest pain point, is just the data, making sure we know enough about our people to be able to talk to them in a relevant way. So,
I mean, that's huge right now, as that's the only way some of us are talking to people. Like, I talked to my executive team about, things get back to normal and conferences and such. And I said, I don't know that we're going to take on the liability of sending people to conferences. And,
Right.
what does that even look like? So right now, I mean, I always preach that the website and our contact database are marketing's greatest assets. And man, is that like so huge right now.
We're seeing a lot of people invest right now into their websites. Like when we're seeing more demand for website overhauls than we've ever seen. And it's funny, that and direct mail. At the start of the pandemic, my partner and I were like, these two things like are going to go away. No one's going to be wanting to invest money in their websites. No one's going to be doing direct mail. And gosh, we could not have been more wrong. I see marketers, our customers, that are just outright asking people for their home address because they want to send them something. And gosh, what a concept. Hey, I want to send you something really cool. What's your address? And people are just so much more willing to give it than I would have ever anticipated. So we're seeing direct mail, especially as it relates to like account-based marketing, do super well. Just again, yeah, I couldn't believe at the front of the pandemic that would have panned out. No pun intended, panned out that way.
I imagine too, like all the restaurants and all the other companies that also had to move strictly to their website being like their main source of income too, right? Like they have to get everything up and running and looking well and connected and integrated with all of their other systems.
Right.
Yeah. We've seen a huge interest from e-commerce come in because everybody's got to be online right now.
Oh yeah, and you could talk about data.
I know.
There's so many data points with anyone in that field.
Well, and so you mentioned ABM, and we get this question a lot. We get the question a lot about, do you have an ABM expert on your team? Can you reference us to an ABM expert? Are there any maybe high level pieces that you do you have a customer, do you have clients who are ABM specific that you kind of want to speak to? Because you say direct mail, so how do we track that in HubSpot?
Yeah, so fun fact before I get started, for like 6 or 8 months, I was actually the, what was my title? Senior manager of ABM education and training for Demandbase, which is an ABM company. So I was like their little internal and external ABM expert at the time. That was like a couple of years ago, but yeah, so we have a couple of big enterprise clients, and we see ABM work best when you've got maybe a slower sales cycle, higher average sales price or annualized contract value. And we see it work well when we break so you got your target accounts, that's great. But if you can segment the target accounts, and usually 3 buckets are what works best. And think of it as like a pyramid. So on the very top, those are your upper echelon, your top tier, your strategic accounts, whatever you want to call them. They are the one-to-one, as much as one-to-one as you can get as a marketer. They're the high touch, high value. You're investing high dollars in them because they're going to be a good customer, right? You've done your data and your intent, and you've determined those are the best ones. In the bottom of the pyramid, you've got your one-to-many. Those are people that they're certainly in your target spectrum. They're certainly going to be great customers to have, but maybe they're not going to have the highest contract value. Maybe they're, not as big, whatever. So you're going to still do account-based marketing to those accounts. You're just not going to be inviting them to VIP dinners and sending them, $200 bottles of wine in the mail. And then in the middle of the pyramid, you have the one to few. And those are like clusters of accounts that are either on the bubble that could be super, super good, upper echelon target accounts, or they're emerging. And those are the ones that you either want to test on, you want to try something in the middle that you're not investing a ton of money, but you're also not too light of a lift. So sort of that's how I think about ABM and breaking your target accounts up. And that's what our clients are doing. And they're doing direct mail. They're measuring it in HubSpot. They're using, I've got a couple of clients on Sendoso, and then we also have, and I think we're partners with Postal.io. It's another really cool direct mail platform that's a little bit more geared towards sales folks, so they can go in and pick the items and meet certain criteria. So yeah, so tracking direct mail has always been a little tricky, but there are QR codes, there are unique links, there are tracking phone numbers, and there are hashtags and all that good stuff. So there are ways to track it. I think on the front end, on like the delivery component, is where the tracking is the coolest, because it's that they got it and why they got it is determined by some criteria that's been defined in an automation platform. That, again, to me is super cool, that somebody just slipped into this lead status, boom, now they get sent something. I think it also helps keep sales folks, if they know about the marketing campaign, once you have good marketing and sales alignment, they should know what the campaigns are that are coming up. If they want someone in their prospect list to get this cool direct mail thing, well, hey, go update their address or go, make sure that you're working the deal so that they get to this status or stage that they can get this thing. So again, surprised that direct mail is seeing such a lift right now. But I think, again, through the lens of ABM is part of the reason why. And I think, again, the pandemic, ironic as it is to say, is helping it. Just helping people ask. The ask is easier, I think, now.
I mean, once again, part of our discussion here is like lead gen during a pandemic. What are people doing differently, right? So I know I've got 50 things to ship out this week. No big deal. It's gonna be fine. I'll have my 4-year-old help with stuffing the crinkle paper in the boxes. So it'll be great. Okay, so I want to kind of shift a little bit and ask Miranda a question about, there are a ton of reports in HubSpot. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, because HubSpot is growing. The capabilities are growing. There's a ton of customization. How do we know what's good? How do we know what's bad?
I mean, I think, again, it all kind of comes down to your data and what you're tracking. And if you're tracking things well, then you can kind of trust your reports. We've also seen a lot of folks, they're really trying to get all their data into one place. And that's where kind of our integration and even our RevOptics is coming into play, because it's like, well, I want to get all these reports, but moving all of that data and getting all of everything into one place is expensive and time consuming. And, maybe I don't have enough API calls, or maybe I have hit my limit of contacts in HubSpot, but I want to report on all of this stuff. And maybe it was in HubSpot at some point. So if you pull the data out, that's kind of what we're finding in RevOptics, and you build your own kind of analytics around that. It's really useful. Because sometimes those reports are missing key information because you had to scrape out some old contacts to make room for new ones. And, or maybe, they're not keeping track of all of the historical data because it's expensive on their end to keep all of that information. So we're finding that it's pulling that data out and being able to generate some reports on our end has been really useful for our own analytics. But also, that's what you have to keep in mind when you're looking at those reports, is like, well, it's what's in there now. And maybe you've cleaned some things up, or maybe you went through a bad habit streak of data, right? Like maybe you had a really bad form that you didn't catch in time, and it just flooded your instance with bad information. And now you have to like strip out some of those timeframes and be very careful about what you're looking at. So that's kind of what we're seeing a lot with our customers.
I mean, Miranda knows this deeply with me because she had to help me with this, because when things are going good and smooth, you're just dumping whatever in. And I think we looked at a company that had, I don't even want to say, like 177 contacts. Like, that's not right. That doesn't make sense. So Miranda and I had to go through some pretty good exercises where she was telling me, this is how this even came in, like really getting into the weeds on why it even got into our HubSpot instance. And we kind of backed into, okay, well, that was maybe kind of a data dump that somebody did at one point. That's not who we want to reach out to. On our team, we talk a lot about spear phishing as opposed to phishing with a net, because right now, like what Emily said, that one-to-one contact with some of those more higher ranked or higher scoring customers based on activity and engagement has been crucial for us, because and we are marketing to marketers at Vertify. So picking up the phone and having these conversations has also just been nice, as I miss, our the different events that we were doing once upon a time. And so it's been great, but we had to clean out a ton of people and make sure that we were not spending time or resources on things that weren't even, really incorrect and bad data. So that's been a big one that we've been doing. Let's see.
I just to like sort of quadruple down on Miranda's point here, because that is a huge question. I mean, like almost daily, I get that from my clients being like, hey, like, thanks for sharing this report, or I've been looking at these numbers. Like, is this like good for like the fintech industry? Or is like this good for whatever? And the reality is like, sure, there are benchmarks by industry, sure. But like it really comes down to historical data. To be able to say what's good, you should probably look like at yourself and your own track record first, right? Then try to strive towards whatever those industry benchmarks are. But still, I mean, it's just a benchmark in an industry. So historical data is everything. And if your historical data isn't there or is out of whack or inaccurate, then like kind of hamstrung. So
oh my gosh,
going back
I love
to data cleanliness and knowing
yes.
what is in there. Yeah.
I love that you said that. Like, shameless plug, we're building that into the RevOptics platform because that's the question we get all the time as marketers, right? I have so many stories of standing in front of a leadership team, a board, and I'm so excited about what I'm presenting on because for me, these numbers are great. And then they go, well, is that good? And you're like, don't you see it in my face? It's so good. But yes, it's having the ability to benchmark against yourself automatically is huge because that is some hard info to get to sometimes, especially what if you're the new person walking in? We also talk about all the time, how do I even trust the data? And so that's one of the things with Vertify is pulling it in from your trustworthy sources, right? We're not asking you to add on some new thing that lays on top of one platform. We're asking you to very leverage the data that everyone does trust, but combine it, your HubSpot instance with your Salesforce instance. Like, what's more trustworthy than combining those two things together, cleaning things out and saying this is what everybody's looking at across sales and marketing and having those same answers. So
the coolest part I saw of the Vertify platform is letting you know, like, hey, yeah, this is the report, this is the data, but like also calling out that, like, you know, if we're looking at the industry segment breakdown, but like this industry is really only like 30% full across the database. So just like FYI, that's huge. How else would you get that? You know what I mean? How else would you know? You'd have to go do a full like little data exercise to go find the completeness of that field and the values, and like it would be a mess. So that's a super, super cool, I guess I don't want to call it a tooltip, but like pop up, you know, feature that you guys have.
Well, and the integrations are really built to prevent bad data from infecting your other systems, right? So say someone did do a big, you know, list import into HubSpot that they should have never done in the first place, but it maybe all of the industries were blank. not you, Lacey.
Never.
But you know, they left all the industries blank, and you could have like something in your integration that says, well, like if it doesn't have an industry, I don't want it in my CRM. I want it to be blocked from going, and then you can clean it up before it ever goes into the other system and creates a problem in multiple sources. So it does kind of keep your one source of truth, whether that's your CRM or maybe a database or something, you know, keeps it clean and doesn't, you know, make everything else sick when somebody else gets sick, which we all know a lot about now.
I mean,
really closing the loop on the pandemic.
Yes, yeah.
Don't let
Marketing in the pandemic
spread to your database.
Before any of this started, I wanted to brand like Vertify branded soaps and send it out. Like, this is funny. When's the last time you got like what is it? Irish Spring branded soap? Like, throwback. Okay, so I don't want to take up the full hour of everybody's time and the questions are just rolling, but I do want to go into kind of the growth marketing side. Emily and we had this conversation from the get-go. So I was introduced to Emily through a colleague of ours thinking that she would be a great early adopter of Vertify, but then the conversation easily grew to, you have growth marketing in your title, kind of tell me what that means. And I get questions about that. What does growth marketing mean when it comes to analytics and reporting? And so I kind of want you to give us a bit of a background on what you're seeing in that space.
Yeah, for sure. I'll definitely do my best. I don't think that there's like a bona fide definition of it just yet, but it is interesting because you brought it up. That was like a couple of months ago. And then in that short window of time, I've had 3 different clients reach out to me and say, hey, I just want to bounce an idea off of you. I'm thinking of changing my entire team's titles to some form of growth marketing. Like, what do you think? And yada, yada. So I think it's awesome because I think that it is in a way, it is like the departure from traditional marketing, which isn't going anywhere. There's still a ton of value in like your 4Ps and, you know, all of your traditional marketing. But what growth marketing is to me is sort of an expanded forensic version of that, with a big microscope in on every little piece of the puzzle. Growth marketers are marketers who measure till they're blue in the face. They iterate until they're blue in the face. They report constantly. They know how to read the story that data is telling them. They know how to tell the story that data is telling them, and they know how to extrapolate what actions or tactics need to be done as a result of what that story is telling them. And again, like the measuring and iterating and scaling, or I guess it lends a hand to scaling, but I mean, in and of it, that is growth, right? And I think a growth marketing team is one that does that in harmony together, that all have, I think growth marketers also have a very good grasp on revenue and revenue metrics, and would consider themselves to be, you know, RevOps experts. So, and you know, Aptitude 8, that's one of our, you know, biggest pedestals that we like to stand on, is because we are a RevOps consulting firm. I mean, everything has to connect. And if you're, I would almost be willing to argue, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, that if you're a company and you have a growth marketing team, you probably also have a growth sales team, and you probably also have a growth services or customer success team.
Oh, yes.
Just because if a marketing team is a growth marketing team, then they can actually be successful without their counterparts behaving and operating in that same capacity and with that same focus. So that's sort of what I think that it means, but interested in what you guys think for sure.
I mean, I constantly say we are all in marketing, right? Like here we have Miranda with us on this webinar. She is on the product team, but we are all marketers. And I talk to sales and customer success constantly about doing some of the same things. And once again, when we talk about data going into your sales enablement tool or your CRM and then coming back to marketing, it's marketing wants to, we're here to help. We're the service organization. I want to understand where the BDR is with where the customer is in their journey, so that I can help be a support for whether it's the BDR, the sales team, the customer success team, right? Like, are we driving value from the very first time you visit our website? That's what we're always thinking of. And I mean, I have a daily stand up where I say, what am I going to do that's external facing today? We are always running experiments, and it's fun, it's fast, but we're eyeball deep in the analytics and kind of understanding, how does this thing translate to revenue, right? Like, how are we helping to grow the business? How are we supporting teams across to grow the business? And that's just been a big part of Vertify. And once again, that consultative resource, how we are constantly talking to our customers and helping them through those things too. That's why we have working sessions like this where people submit questions. We want to be here to kind of help you with HubSpot. You know, what is your marketing automation tool? Like, let's help you grow into it and do even more with it, kind of thing. So that's part of the growth marketing mindset, I think.
Well, I think the tracking part too is where it all just kind of comes back together. Like, we're all tracking information. Like product, we're tracking information. We're tracking user clicks. Is someone going back when we didn't want them to go back, or is someone having a bad experience? You know, we're tracking that information. And as well as, like, you know, I think you were talking about websites, you know, people focusing on their websites more. You know, it's like those clicks, I think people for a long time thought those weren't as important, but it's like, no, now everything is important. Like that growth is like, onboarding starts as soon as someone searches your company, right? That's when onboarding starts. It's like, it starts right then, like their first impression of you and where they're clicking and how they're moving through your website, or how they're moving through your free trials, or how they're doing all of these different actions. It flows through sales, marketing, product, and CS. Like, it's all together, and it starts, you know, immediately. And you got to start that tracking and you know, connect it all the way through down to customer success, right?
I think you define growth marketing by a single metric, hands down, it would be your CAC to LTV ratio. And I know a lot of marketers are, yeah, that's important. We're looking at it. Do you know how hard it is to get your CAC to LTV ratio? There's a lot of different ways to slice the data. There's a lot of different data to slice. Is it all accurate? Who knows? Do you have access to all of it? And those two metrics too, or like the ratio of those two things, also require a ton of information from product. They require a ton of information from your sales team. They require a ton of information about your own, your spend of your marketing programs. And to your point, Miranda, literally like every little thing matters. It does. Like it absolutely does. And it all rolls up into what I think, again, is the best way to define it by a metric, which is CAC to LTV ratio. Like how much is the cost to bring people in and how much are they bringing back over time?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love this. And that brings us straight into we talk about the customer data journey all the time. This is why I came to Vertify to solve a problem that I'd had as a marketer. And so, especially as we're all working from home and in different offices, remote, all of the things, we just talk about liberating your data and integrating your systems. Things can't live behind a license like a seat anymore. We have got to free the data, get it into the system of record that you have. I, once again, talk about the data living in my workflow. To be honest, I don't want to go to Salesforce. Don't make me do it. If you can bring it back to my marketing automation tool and give me what I need there, that's perfect. I love it.
Marketer ever. Every marketer.
Right? Every marketer ever. And then, contact intelligence, that smarter database, cleaning the data, hygiene type thing. We just stress to everyone, whatever you're using, just use something, especially in a time where we have customers who their target market, their ideal customer profile changed dramatically middle of this year. E-commerce, we've seen a huge spike. Healthcare, huge spike, right? There's environmental things that we can't help that are going to change who our ideal customer becomes. And so being on top of that and understanding that is huge. And then proving our impact, the analytics. Right now, we're always talking about, budget season and how we're redoing our budgets and how other teams are salivating at our events budget. And it's like, no. I did something really good with it one time. I'm going to continue to do something really good. So defend your spend is what we talk about all the time. So using the analytics that you have available to you to the best ability, getting something like Vertify's RevOptics to really deep dive and have those actionable insights is huge. It's what we talk about all the time. So we are here to empower the marketer and marketing ops, demand gen, whoever they may be, to sit in front of their board, their exec team, and say, here's the revenue that we impacted, this team impacted, and we're going to keep impacting it. So, give us the budget. Let's see if I can, there we go. Okay, so I promise to try and keep this a little bit short. Y'all, we have so many more questions. So I am going to throw a couple of these to Miranda and Emily after this. We are going to release a recording. We're going to set up a blog post. We may do a blog series. We got more HubSpot questions than we've gotten on any of the tools that we've done so far. So I'm really excited to continue this. I know that early next year, we're going to start working sessions with product and customer success. So we're going to keep these going. Maybe we'll do them at 4:00 and tell people to bring their beverage of choice. But these have been great. So I put our email addresses up here. Once again, we've got Emily at Aptitude 8. She's our HubSpot person. And then Miranda, who's technical in the weeds. I think she mentioned API calls and some things that even go over my head. So, and you can also, Director of Marketing here at Vertify, I can get your questions to whoever you need them to get to. So y'all just let me know. I do want to introduce, via just telling you about Brianna Wilson, who is going to be reaching out afterwards. She'll be reaching out with some of the answered questions and asking you if you have any other questions for her. She'll also be talking more about Emily and myself and Vertify and Aptitude 8. So that's a great time to send anything else over to us that you want to send. So look forward to talking to Bree in the coming days before we get into the rush of Thanksgiving. But thank you, Emily, for joining us today. Miranda, as always, for being that technical resource. I had a great time with y'all, and we'll have to do it again.
Yeah,
Love
sure.
to. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we'll see everybody soon.
Bye.
Bye.